Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of failed attempts to paint a floral abstract. I'm just kidding, but I hope what you have taken from the series of I'm going to call them studio sessions. I think it's a better description than tutorials, is that it's fun to try things out. Push the envelope, see what you can do, and things happen when you least expect them. And I really didn't know where this would take me. And after filming this current video, I'll get into the products and everything in a bit. After filming this, I kind of took a little bit of a break from this subject, and I did paint a bunch of other things, kind of went more abstract, and did a lot of it off camera just because I felt like it. And I have a painting area that is to the side, and it's not like to the side of this table where I film. It's just a nicer area, but it's not so camera friendly. So I don't know, I just decided to kind of work off camera a little bit. But the last thing that I'm going to paint in this video is probably the best version, or my favorite version. I don't know if you'll agree with that. Let me know in the comments. My favorite one. And I really see every painting that I did up to that point in that last piece, and I really don't think I could have gotten to that stage if I hadn't painted all those previous paintings. This was probably one of the best, more satisfying warm-ups. I mentioned in the previous video that I really enjoy warming up on these smaller pieces of paper. I'm really trying to use up my stash of all kinds of watercolor papers. These are by Prima. They are, really affordable. I mean, it is like a tiny pad. I don't even know if they still make it, but I have a few of these, and they work really well for these kind of quick sketches. What I tried here that was different from my previous versions is that the flower is mostly painted with the color lavender as opposed to the cobalt violets. And then I did that wash of yellow just underneath it. And there's something about those two colors together that really vibrates. And I love how it turned out. I hope to kind of go back to that idea and those colors and make a larger version. And then I made another one, kind of going back to the original colors that I mostly used, cobalt violet, but this time, if you notice, I'm sketching the flower upside down. And that sometimes helps to get like a different perspective of your subject. Maybe some areas that you found difficult to draw are suddenly a little bit easier. For me, it was one of the petals that I really felt kind of needed some work on to make it look dimensional, like it's coming at you. I find those are really, really hard to do, when the petals kind of bend. It's hard to paint that, especially if you're doing very loose sketching. And I thought, okay, maybe I'll try it upside down. I also liked the idea of that composition, and I actually really like the idea of that composition. I think it's very dynamic and just looks even better than the regular, pointing up flower. So I might explore that in the future. This one was okay. Sometimes there's something about that first version, first something like beginner's luck or something that just seems to work. But this was also fun. And I think that area that I'm working on was the kind of magical spot of this particular warm-up. Again, I'm using this sword brush, which is really, really fun and allows you to get these super thin lines. If you have the right amount of pigment loaded on it. It will drip if you have too much water, but it's just a really fun brush. One of my favorites. I use it all the time. And when you're working this small, then you can really kind of almost use it as a single brush. You don't really need anything else. So yeah, this was really fun to do. And after these two warm-ups, we're moving to the next painting, which sadly I did not take a large piece of paper, but still a small one. I'm using one of my paper blocks, which is this one that I'm going to use, is by Paul Rubens. It was sent to me a while back, and I have heard from a reliable source that that paper is also cellulose paper. I feel like I'm a bit of a broken record. Ooh, that was a nice touch, that blue in the middle. I like that. So these small sketches really, I feel like, give you the opportunity to try a lot of things. There's not a lot to lose. The only annoyance is when something really good happens and it's on a tiny piece of paper, but what are you going to do? So this is the Paul Rubens paper block, and it's cold press. It has a nice texture, which you can see now on the background. If you watched my previous video, I did that already, and I decided this was really something I should consider in, other versions of this painting. And that is to start with a very, very light wash. Usually, I don't know, this whole first wash thing doesn't really work well for me. I either go into heavy, things get too muddy, I lose interest, I lose direction, I don't know what to do with it. But here I had a very clear idea of what I wanted to do. I was really, really familiar with my colors and where I wanted to place each one of them on my painting. And I could add this first layer in a very intentional way. I think it really works. I think it brings this warmth to the whole painting. What I didn't like about the previous versions, I felt that all the petals of the flower, because I don't completely color them in, they were kind of too disconnected. They had the white of the paper, which is, nice to have some light in your painting, but it felt kind of disconnected with my background, that I had all those colors in the background, which I really liked. So I thought the way to overcome this is to just have a very light wash on the entire piece. And there is, too much of a good thing. I did try other kind of similar paintings. If you do that first, if you do those washes with a heavier hand, I think the result is not as, light and airy as I would want. It starts to get heavy, it starts to get like just too much, and you really lose the light. But I think in this particular painting, it worked really, really well. If I really wanted to, I could go in with like white or almost white gouache and add some highlights, but I don't feel it needs it. And you can see here, as opposed to the previous paintings, I'm working a lot more with my dagger brush. I really enjoyed those brush marks and using more of those lines in my flower. So there is a lot more line work and brush work in this version, and I like it. Again, there's a very fine line between taking it too far, which I did in that crazy I'm gonna ruin this painting video. I think that was part 5 or part 6. No, part 5. And here I'm trying to tone it down and just be more intentional about it. I felt in previous versions, sometimes my flowers were kind of too light, too flat. So I needed to bring some darker values to them, but I didn't want it to be too dark. And the way I decided to go is mix ultramarine blue and some bright rose, and then sometimes a bit of the cobalt violet to get darker violets and to get that darker value without going too dark. I don't really like dark colors. I'm very, very specific about the ones that I do like. And in general, I really enjoy light paintings. So paintings with light value, but those can look flat. So I do need to bring some darker colors. I try to use sometimes the color itself as a darker value. So for example, something like a blue or a purple reads darker value than a yellow, but that can only take you so far. You do need at some point to go a little bit darker, and that it just takes a lot of trial and error to find that perfect dosage. So going back to these brush strokes that I did in the previous versions that I really liked, and I also like them in that color, the cobalt teal. It's a great accent color. I do have to be careful with it because I don't like too much of it. But I really think that this particular painting works really well. To me, when I look at it, I'm really pleased. And overall, I can see a lot of good things. If I could just make the same thing larger, I would be very, very happy too. I hope that I'm going to try and do this. There are so many things that I like about this version. I really don't feel like changing a lot about it. So I have already prepped the first wash on a thicker, my best watercolor paper. That is the largest size that I have, which is a 1/4 imperial. And I'm going to try and do that. I'm kind of scared to do it on camera, but, paper needs to serve its purpose and be used. And I have more sheets, you can paint on both sides of it. I really paint on both sides of most of my sketches and watercolor papers, unless I really, really like how something turned out. And then I, prefer to reserve the right to frame it or use it somehow at a later stage. And now going in with some yellow very carefully, because I know it can get too much very fast. So I'm trying to go slow here. And that's definitely some good advice for myself. Sometimes I get so impatient. Sometimes I just want to do something, anything, just to get on with it, just to finish something or move on. And I know that a lot of artists really take their time, and, they can do a first wash or a painting and then leave it for a week and then go back to it. I don't know if that works for me. Maybe it will at some point, but there's Lily with her watercolors. But I really am the kind of person, I need to finish things as fast as possible. Otherwise, I lose interest, and I don't want that. So I try to finish a painting within a few days. If I really don't know what I want to do, I walk away and come back like the next day. I don't wait too long. So you can see here, I'm just adding, now it's really down to those final touches. And adding some texture to the background. I really liked how that looked. I had that dark stroke of dusk pink on the right side of the flower. Again, really liked how that worked. It kind of almost all just clicked and worked, and after hours and hours of practice, it was like magic. You can really see that I am just adding really, really small touches. I'm trying to look around my painting, see what it needs. A little bit more darkness there. I feel that shape on the right side just is a little bit lonely. And I need some more darker values there in that area. So that's why I added some. Adding just a few lines here and there, not to go too far like the hairball in the other flower. And splatters, because I love splatters. They are kind of one of my crutches, my safety nets. They're a way to add detail without having to actually, know anything. I love to splatter in yellow. It just, I don't know, it just works almost on everything. It brings in some light, and some of it got onto my flower, and it really kind of pulls everything together. That's another thing. I didn't want the flower and the background to be too separated, and just adding that touch of warmth, that little bit of yellow that is also in the background, I think really brings the whole thing together and brings that flower a bit more to life. So I hope you enjoyed this series. More coming. Let me know in the comments what you want to see, and I wish you a wonderful day. Bye.